Dario, Tony, I'm very excited to have you guys on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. Tony, you're one of the first people I met here in Silicon Valley years and years ago. Dario, we've most recently met, but I have a lot of laughs whenever we talk. But before we dive into those questions, can you give our audience a little bit of background of your careers up until this point? Dario, you want to go first?
Yes, let me go first. First of all, thank you for taking the time to chat with us. Your podcast is awesome.
Thank you.
I grew up in Italy. Then I had some of the studies in the US. After my studies, I worked for a consulting company all around the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. I eventually came back to America, and one of my clients hired me. Was a Fortune 500 company, and spent 5 years over there. And then I ended up in another consulting company, and then that's it. I mean, I decided to go on my own.
Okay. And
with Tony.
Tony, your background.
I also grew up in Italy, joined the same consulting company where Dario was, and this is how we know each other since a couple of decades now. I joined also a multinational that sent me here in the United States in 2011. And after a little while I was here, I got to know you and Bay Angels and all this kind of stuff. Working on this adventure with Dario now.
Okay, so both of you were very modest with your careers up to this point. For our audience out there, their links to their LinkedIn will be in the show notes, so check that out. So the careers, though, were mostly corporate, consultant, big companies. I don't want to have an age thing, but most entrepreneurs that go all in do it right out of college, maybe before they get married, have kids. Why right now? Why go all in on this new company that you're founding? Why not just hang out on the beach in Italy, have some wine, just hang out a little bit? Why go all in right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't go to Italy very often, but we do have a lot of wines as part of our startup culture. No, I'm just joking. It's a very good question. My mother is asking the same question. And my in-laws ask the same questions. The long story short is that initially everything started to solve a personal problem of mine, which is, how do I make sure that I gain the financial security I need personally for the rest of my life?
Okay.
And I want to do that without spending a lot of money, because you never know how long you're going to live, how much money you need to spend. And long story short, coming from the other side of the ocean, where my father retired with 80-90% of the retirement money, their last paycheck actually, came in over here, I realized I needed to save, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the money is enough. So what really happened was that I started to become very frugal, because you never know. Will you go to a nursing home? Will you have medical expenses? And so I started thinking about, can we do anything about that? And I started working with Tony on what we think is the solution to that problem that each one of us has, regardless of income.
So question, what is that solution? And is it a problem that all of us face, or is it a problem that just a select few such as yourself were encountering?
So starting from the last question, I would say that everyone faces the problem. Regardless of your wealth, you are very concerned about leaving your money, because what really happens is that you spend less than you could. In my specific case, I didn't have any wealth transfer to plan. So you're in a condition which you say, well, I could afford this big toy I really want, but what if in 3 years from now something happens to me and I spend my next 50 years in a hospital or connected to machines and so on? Or even better, you can say, well, that's the worst case scenario, but what if I decided to stop working? Will the money be enough? That is number one. And number two, I would say that going back to your original question, it's a problem that not only everyone faces, but there are not, I believe, personally speaking, no good solutions. I like to say that we started Sably because together we want to answer a key question, which is, how do I achieve the highest level of financial security in my latest years with the smallest amount of money possible? I repeat, how do I achieve the highest level of financial security in my latest years with the smallest amount of money possible? And that was the beginning of the company.
Okay. So let's go back even further. So that's the foundation of the company. Very interesting. It came about a personal problem that you wanted to solve. But up until this point, this is the first career that company you've started, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What was it from your past careers that have translated? What were some of the lessons learned, knowledge there for maybe other of our listeners that are thinking, I've been in the corporate world my whole life. Maybe I have this idea and I want to branch off and try to create it. What were some of the lessons there that can be used in what your current role is?
You want to take it or take it?
Oh, I can take it and you can continue. It's definitely an exit from your comfort zone. I mean, success careers in the corporation world give you a lot of safety, money. Leaving this is a challenge. On the other side, what drove us was also the possibility to have impact. This is not just a personal problem, it's a global problem. 2 out of 3 Americans run out of money when they are in the late 80s. It's we want to really do something that brings impact. We like the idea also to be successful independently from the corporate environment. I don't know how to explain. It is fun. It's
what's
freedom.
Fun about it?
Oh, it's fun. I had so much fun in my life. I can take it this one.
Why,
Guys, if you have any doubt you want to do it, do it. Okay, no doubt about that. It's going to be more difficult than you expected. But in terms of personal growth and feeling of contribution to the world and the society is worth it, regardless of the outcome. I mean, what's fun is the journey, right?
So even if it's a complete failure, which we're not hoping for, we're hoping for the unicorn.
It will be a unicorn. I don't know if you canceled this one, but no doubt about that.
Okay, so on this journey, what are some, I guess, maybe some setbacks or challenges that you faced? How did you overcome
every day
it?
Is a challenge and is a setback. And I think that the journey is the most valuable aspect of the adventure. And because if it were easy, somebody would have done what you do as a founder. I would say that going back to your original question about, okay, why would you move from corporate America and do something, okay, so late in life, we're not the youngest. I would say that personally, I was very lucky to have 3 wonderful employers. A consulting company, I did a very interesting project in risk management and capital management. Without that project, we wouldn't be building this company together, number 1. Number 2, my second employer was fantastic. I had the privilege to work very closely with their leaders, and they brought innovation in financial services like no one else before in that industry. So I saw not the opportunity, but the possibility of changing the way an industry operates. I saw it firsthand. Without that, I would never have done. I would have never joined a company like this one. I said it's impossible. And the third employer was awesome because I learned distribution, which is key in any business. You can be anything you want, but you need to be able to sell it, right? So everything that we are building together with Tony is the result of our history, right? But I would say that to go back to your question, even if you are old, you are in your 40s,
I don't think 40s is old, but
starting with even if you're old, right? In the 50s and 60s, and you have a doubt, should I do it? I would recommend you do it. Obviously, I mean, I have some parachutes options, meaning that I save some money, but it's definitely worth the adventure.
Is it ever awkward, or Tony, if you want to add to that, go for it.
Just one thing. I mean, you want to also live without regrets. I mean, for me, one big point when I started to talk with Dario was, wow, this is a great idea. We have ways to make it. We don't know if it is possible, but if it's possible, it's going to be huge in terms of returns, in terms of impact. And you don't want to live regretting you didn't try to do what was possible.
Well, question there, what's a bigger drive for you right now? Is it the returns or is it the impact?
I take it over. By far, the impact. The return, because you need to be good and lucky to get returns. And on the impact side, you can, even if you fail, you open the door to someone better than you, or faster than you, or more qualified than you. And you open a new industry, right? And it doesn't, I mean, the first mover advantage is valuable, but sometimes the second followers, they open and they follow and they win. So, I mean, it is personal, and then, okay, we are founders, we don't agree, or 80% of the stuff we say. But personally speaking, okay, it's way better to build something great that eventually is copied and does useful things to the world, rather than being successful selling something that is less valuable to the society.
Yeah, music stands or microphone stands.
You can make a lot of money with this microphone.
Yeah, exactly. This is all about.
We missed that a little bit, but yeah.
This is all about the pride of opening the door, and to really think about this. Also, the complexity of the solution from an actuarial point of view, from a regulatory framework point of view, from a technology point of view. This is a brand new approach that doesn't have anything existing that can be used. All of this makes fun. It's I personally really enjoy the intellectual challenge.
Speaking of challenges, one thing that I really want to ask, Tony, when we met, it was at Bay Angels. You were on the investor side as the angel writing checks for the entrepreneur, whereas now both of you are on the other side of the table, raising capital, talking to the investors. How is that shift? Also, what lessons did you take from when you were writing checks to now pitching?
Oh, it's worse than I would have ever expected. It's complicated also because when you bring a new idea on the market, you need to align with investors and partners that believe in the mission and in the final goal. The normal categories of tractions and build up MVP don't work. I mean, we had a lot of regulatory work at the beginning. The traditional MVP would have not worked. And here I believe that also our experience in the industry in the past 20 years has been really, really helpful, because we can see what is possible, what we want to do.
So go back to it. So do you pitch different to the investors than I guess other startups in the past pitched to you?
Definitely yes, because we cannot follow. We have a level of innovation that doesn't allow us to follow exactly the typical framework. Even when I was an investor, in any case, I was personally very interested in ideas that change the world, that have high returns, big markets. For me, even as an investor, the mission and vision was more important than the work done in the previous 6 months. But I agree, and I know that many early stage investors might think differently.
Dario, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I never received a pitch in my life. I'm learning. I'm still learning.
Okay, then another question there. When talking to investors now, where do they put the most value on your team? Is it that you have 20, 30 years experience? Is it the amount of personal capital you've invested to this point? Is it your seniority? What is it that is capturing the attention of investors? Or is it the idea and the mission? What do you say to them that they go, aha, I like these guys?
So don't try to be the nasty Italian, but you should ask them, not us. But I can give a proxy of my understanding. I think that by far, number one is the size of the industry in which we operate. Retirement is worth 40 trillion, probably even more, $40 trillion with a T. So it's an industry where, at least in my personal point of view, there's been very little innovation in the past 50 years. So the industry is number one. Number two, the level of innovation that we bring. Meaning that there are typically marginal improvements and efficiencies built in many new ventures. So whatever was done manually now is done by AI. Whatever was done with, say, an advisor, now there is a robot or whatever, right? Instead, we are building a new category of financial products, which is very exciting. Now, within this context, though, they also know the risk associated to bring into market something new, and ideally, you would like to invest in a second-time founders or third-time founders, not like first try like us.
So the development of the company and the idea, how important for having a career up at this point, you have a Rolodex that I would guess most entrepreneurs out of college don't have access to. How is partnerships, collaboration, how has that played a part in the company's development?
It's actually very important for us. We also have some very big players as investors. They came later, they weren't the first investors. And we are very, I'm still shocked by the level of interest that we receive from the biggest players in the world about what we're building, and both at the product level and distribution levels. So from that point of view, we are very lucky. However, keep in mind that, especially in corporate Americas, those organizations are siloed. So the fact that, let's say, you have some experience in one industry that is specific, let's say insurance, doesn't necessarily mean that that experiences and relationships go beyond the insurance vertical. So for instance, Tony and I have experiences in insurance, but not, let's say, in investment management. That doesn't mean that our experience in insurance opened the doors to the guys in investment management. Mm-hmm. So I wish we were lucky. Now we are not. We need to start like at 25 years old, just drop in Stanford. Yeah.
The Stanford thing, I think, helps a lot.
I was a recruiter at Stanford for my first consulting company.
Really?
MBA school. Yeah, I used to fly there from Chicago to San Francisco, Palo Alto, every Thursday.
You could leverage the network. You'd be like, hey, half the students here I recruited.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Tony, you wanted to say something?
No, I like the idea that we have to be like 25 years old kids. It's a way to get younger.
And we had the same level of failures, actually, with VCs.
So is that kind of odd, though, when you're sitting across the table from the VC and you're like, this VC is actually younger than me?
Yeah, that happens very often to us. Also because the vast majority of the first meetings, interviews are typically done with the most junior guys that came out from Stanford, for instance, and Harvard. And it's been actually great. Actually, we feel like I don't see them as younger than me by far. I don't know whether it's a bad thing. You should probably cut it another one, but I really believe that we feel younger than them. Okay. In terms of opportunity, vision, willingness to take risks, we are definitely younger than many of the investors that we meet. At least that's my personal point of view.
Tony, you got anything to add to that?
Absolutely no. I mean, I could have said better than him.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you started the company, Fulfill a Dream. You're pitching investors, raising capital. But the company's an international company, right? Half the time is here, half the time's Europe. How did you go about recruiting engineers? How did you go about recruiting other than just the two of yourselves for this team?
Just to be specific, as of now, we are only an American company. However, our plan is to be a global company, and the first two continents are the US.
So all the engineers in that are here in the US?
I know that's they are more or less everywhere in the world. He has all the numbers and the nationalities.
I was going to say, because the company developed over the pandemic. I'm surprised if not all the engineers were overseas.
We believe that the seniors, the leader of any sector, marketing, technology, needs to be nearby. This is a company that requires a lot of problem solving, and problem solving works better at the coffee machine or in front of a bottle of wine than on a Zoom call.
So then where is everyone physically located?
We are, the top team is in Colorado. We have technology junior or middle level engineers in Central America and even in Africa, in West Africa, but the problem solvers need to spend time in Colorado.
Yeah, the leadership is local, plus a few other persons in California and in the East Coast. So I would say that the company is headquarters in Boulder, Colorado, beautiful Boulder.
How often does the engineer team how often do they physically get together? And is there any advice you can give companies that were founded over the last few years where everything was as remote as possible?
So on the engineering team, I don't know, but I'll leave it to Tony. I think that there is a huge amount of value, at least at the problem solving level, in working together and meeting daily. Then we are semi-remote, so we have, for instance, one of our person is a local in Denver. She's coming 3 days a week instead of 5. But there is a huge amount of value at problem-solving level and understanding the culture of the company, understanding where we want to go and what is the role. It's called morality, right? How do you fit in this value chain, in this machine, by working together? And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if by 2025, we will have, except for IT, 70% of the people working together.
How do you go about developing a company culture? So, I mean, going back to the younger than 25, most startups, ping pong tables, foosball, that, drinking kombucha versus wine. How did you develop the company culture for your group?
Oh, that's very good. I think that
a lot of ice creams.
Ice cream. Everybody is gaining weight working with us. Not only drinking wine and also eating ice creams. Not gelato, unfortunately, but we should. We will upgrade next year with gelato. Joking apart, for us, every time we interview people, we ask the usual question. Do you believe in our mission, which is to give people financial peace of mind for the rest of their lives? If they don't see this, if you wish, social aspect of the business, they don't need to work with us, because they would do it just for a personal return or would be a backup options for what they really want to do. We are passionate about what we're working on, and we only want passionate people.
Now, back in your corporate life, would you ever ask that question to potential hires?
No, it would have never crossed my mind.
Really?
Yeah. But not only that, you would say that even you don't think that way, right? You think about your personal ROI, what is the level of options and whatever compensation you get, right? How you negotiate the details.
No, but that's interesting though, just to ask if you believe in the mission of the company. Just straight up ask that.
I think it's actually relatively common in startups, I believe, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. At least at the leadership level, and by leadership, you mean top like 7-8 people in the company. Yes, absolutely. Why would you do it otherwise?
Yeah.
We work 80 hours a week, including weekends. Unless you believe what we are doing, it's very challenging to keep up.
Now, is there, because when you're right out of college, you can go nonstop, 24 hours a day, just work. Your body doesn't need the same rest. At least I remember, barely sleeping and going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
How is the 80-hour work culture for you guys right now?
You should ask Tony. I drink a lot of coffee now. I never drank coffee in my life.
He drinks also a good quantity of wine. Also, I mean, you cannot believe how good he becomes with problem solving when he drinks.
Yeah, getting alpha state. It's called alpha state.
It's unbelievable. The point is that the truth is that we don't count the hours. I mean, we have problems. We have exciting things coming, new ideas on marketing, on products, on developing pieces of a technology. And when you start, you don't realize how long it takes. I mean, it's one of the fun things, one of the things I really like of this change from corporation to building your business is that it's so fun that you are never tired.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. I think we'll probably pull that out, that quote for the little teaser.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun. You're never tired. Okay, then.
I will take advantage of this quote also with him.
We'll have quoted by Dario, even in Tony's voice.
Okay, I cannot. Now I cannot leave even at midnight.
So going back to the operations of the business itself, how are you tracking the growth? How are you tracking the progress of it? What metrics are you looking at internally going, okay, these are what we want to track, and how are they decided?
You want to take it?
This is a very tricky question because, as I said, we are in uncharted territory because it's a new category of financial products in a sector that is untapped. And very often we change trajectory, or we have new ideas or new pieces before we can even measure what we have done before. So we know that we are proceeding. So if we look back, we are amazed by the quantity of work we are doing, but it's given the dynamic and the continuous changes and improvement, also the problem solving is very difficult to track with conventional metrics.
Yeah, having said that, I mean, given the type of work we are doing, there are two major KPIs that are important. One is traction on the compliance side, and the second is traction on the partnership side. We are partners with a number of very large Fortune 500 companies. We're doing things together, so those are real KPIs that we track. We are less into cost of customer acquisitions at this time, given the stage and the type of work that we are doing.
Speaking of very early on, because these big clients, I mean, I'm sure they look great. The logo's there. I'm sure everyone you talk to, they love it. But I would guess the sales cycle would be so much longer for those big companies than the smaller ones. How do you go about deciding we tackle these giants, that's going to be a long sales cycle, or we go for these minnows, which are going to be a quick win?
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. We talked about that in the past few months. I mean, our point of view is to be totally independent and be in charge of our destiny so that we don't rely on those long sales cycles. Having said that, you build relationships with leaders that know the industry better than we do, or at least have way more experience than us. and they are typically never the early adopters, right? So we are kind of balancing. It's a kind of a balancing act as a startup, which is you don't want to really look and sound unreliable, especially in financial service, right? Think about all the mess going on in the past couple of years. You need to, those relationships are important. They just take longer. But as a startup, right, you don't want to go belly up because the sales cycle with I don't know, a major company takes 6 months longer than expected because maybe that the board needs to decide or whether they should make a partnership, right?
I mean, I would just be worried about running out of the capital that's been raised without showing the results. Just, okay, we have this great pipeline, and then the investors going, yeah, you've had that great pipeline for the last year. We got to see some conversion there.
That's why you need to be in charge of your own destiny by having direct clients relationships without, let's say, a partner that is more recognized than you by the public. I think it's a good balance. The first few years will be on our own, and then after the non-early adopters follow, you open those channels of these established institutions.
Tony, do you have anything to add?
He said it very well. I mean, partners are good for growth, but not for the start.
And we do them a favor in a very positive way. I mean, I would love to partner with the biggest players, right? We would love to partner with the biggest players in the world, but will they love to do it? Probably not, right? And there's not their game. It's not their identity. They shouldn't be their identity.
Well, that's another question there. So how do you know what size of customer to reach out to at the very beginning when you're starting your company? Because if you go for the giants, you might not be able to service or perform what you're pitching. If you go for something too small, maybe it's not the lemon's not worth the squeeze. How do you know what size of company to go for at the very beginning?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So luckily enough, we started and we're successful with some of the largest players in the industry. And I'm not saying that's one of the best thing we did. I mean, this may be also some of the mistakes we make, right? Because as a startup, you need to play with the smaller whales before you go to the big ones, because you learn a lot from the mistakes of the smallest whales, right? You don't want to look not as good with the big ones. But we were very lucky to establish from the beginning very strong relationships with some of the biggest players. And from that point of view, we went through also an accelerator, a relatively well-known accelerator, that gave us some exposure that we weren't even dreamed of. Second, we have relationships that make us a little bit more credible than the super young startup in Silicon Valley. But again, I would say that to answer your question is the short answer, we don't know. Okay, what is the right size? And I think that there is no real answer that fits all. It depends on the industry. And in terms of management of a client, actually from our point of view, working in our specific sector, we are very scalable. There is a huge amount of effort that needs to be done on a number of aspects. But then once you build, I'm exaggerating, but once you build a fund, right, you're going to have 10 investors or 50,000 or 50 million investors, right, if the fund is regulated appropriately.
You'd mentioned you went through an accelerator. Do you recommend most startups going through accelerators or what has been, yeah?
I would say that it depends on the accelerator. It depends on the startup industry, and it depends on the stage of the startup. We don't make any comments about our accelerator. I mean, super easy to go online. You find it. It's not difficult to find out.
Don't need to mention it. Yeah, just accelerators in general.
In general, again, depends. And there is no one size fits all. I don't know, Tony, what do you think?
It depends on what you're looking for. Given our past experiences, but we didn't need to learn how to make a business plan or product design, this kind of stuff. But we needed, and it was actually very helpful in terms of building a relationship and having access to additional potential partner and collaborator. That was very positive for us.
Yeah, not only, let me add, it's actually very important because building a business, I had the privilege of building 2 successful businesses in corporate America. And it's way easier there than here. So I think that the accelerators, are really teaching people and teaching us, despite our experiences, on how to build a business at startup level, right? You don't have the big brand of that you had in the past.
When you don't have that big brand at the startup, any suggestions for people out there on how to go about and negotiate those first contracts? Because you really have no leverage when you're talking, especially with the bigger groups.
Oh, it's moving to me. I thought you answered this one. No, we don't. We can tell you what not to do. And we will spend probably 3 hours telling you what not to do, but what to do.
We're here to learn. Tell us a few things not to do then.
To be very aggressive on day one. It's very bad. To expect people to understand exactly what you are building and doing. Do it. Focus on the relationships and people in the partnerships that really are motivated on making a partnership. And also, I think one of the most important one that most people, even including us, don't care is who's going to be impacted by a potential partnership, right? So I remember a specific case where we were discussing a partnership with a very large player. And we were thinking, oh, this is great, no brainer. Why shouldn't they do it? Well, because there is somebody losing if they do it. So there is internal politics with the partnership that you build, right? It's not politics. It's actually the interest of the company itself, right? On what to do it. So not only you need to focus and care on those that are positively impacted by those relationships and new partnership potentials, but also those who are negatively impacted. And those are typically the persons you don't talk with in the organization. Because if you call an organization, do you focus on whoever is going to get the best benefit out of the partnership with you? You never call somebody that's not going to get a positive outcome out of that.
I wonder how many people straight out of college, when they start their companies or in these accelerators, don't quite understand corporate politics, corporate dynamics. From your experience with all the years, how much did it help you when you were navigating those internal conversations, those internal teams?
It helped a bit. Doesn't matter where you are coming from. If you are a young graduate or an experienced executive, at the end, in a negotiation, is always about them. If you want to build something, you need to get trust, and you need to understand what is the agenda of a person on the other side. It's not about us. It's not about our product. It's not even about societal impact. It's about what benefit the other part. And if we find a common win-win, then you go ahead.
Yeah, and also in my personal experience, I would say that it depends very much on the size of the counterparty. The bigger the counterparty, the more, we call it politics, actually good, like working relationship with colleagues and people, right? It's not just politics in a negative way, it's a positive way. Because let's say that if I were the CEO of a large corporation, right? First of all, I will never know that there is a small startup who wants to make an agreement with one of the business units that we have in California. So but as a large corporations, I know that we don't want to be exposed to potential reputational risks. That's good sense. Okay. You're a steward of my investment money, which is very good as a leader. And number two, you also need to think that a startup may go belly up in 2, 3, 5 years from now, your colleagues remain there, your relationships remain there. And there is, in many corporations, unfortunately, the larger they are, the more this is true, there is more benefit in not making mistakes than doing something good. Right? First, don't screw it up. Second, try to do something great. Not vice versa. But you cannot do something great without taking some risks.
And with that, we got a couple minutes left. Tony, Dario, what advice, going back to, you've started this company after a long time in corporate world, what advice would you have given yourself earlier, or what knowledge would you have tried to get while in the corporate world still to help with what you're doing now?
Shit, Tony.
It's what we got from the corporate world are basically relationships, networking, that is very useful, and understanding of the industry, the technicalities. From a management perspective, this has been a very humbling experience, because trust me, when these things is done, I will write a book on how it's more complicated to manage 10 people than to manage thousands.
Well, we'll have you back on the show for that book. Dario, before we wrap it up, I don't even think we've mentioned what Savly does in this interview. Could you give us your elevator pitch?
That would be too long for the audience, but we are bringing pensions back to America. We are bringing pensions that are different from the old ones. I believe they are better. Why? Because they are market driven, and you carry those pensions with you for the rest of your lives. They are independent from your employer.
Okay. And if anyone wants to find out more information about what you, your team, Tony, what everyone's working on, what's the best way to go about doing that?
The best way is check out savly.com, which is SAVVLY.com.
Fantastic. We'll have that information in the show notes. And when I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley podcast, I'm an investment banker focused on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking to people 6 months, a year before they want to do any of these major transactions. And go to our website, thesiliconvalleypodcast.com, where we have our archive of past episodes, and you get to see what we're working on. And with that, Tony, Dario, thank you guys for taking your time to be on the show this week of the Silicon Valley Podcast.
Thank you.